Hi, this is Tom Baker from the Photographer's Lounge, and today I just wanted to present a quick little tip on how to create really realistic looking HDR images out of Photomatix Pro. This tip comes courtesy of Ron Pepper from Photomatix, and he shared it during a podcast interview that we did on our Shutter Tripping podcast a few months back. Now, the reason why you may not know this is because unlike a lot of the different features inside of Photomatix that you can access manually when you open up a set of brackets from Lightroom or by going to File, brackets, this one is only available inside the batch processing utility. So to get to that, you click on the Automate file option and go to Batch Processing. When batch processing comes up, you'll have a new window with a bunch of new dialog options, most of which we'll go over quickly, but the one that we really need right now is this Fuse Exposure with Fusion Realistic. Now this is going to generate a little bit of a different result than the normal tone mapping, which has that sort of heavy HDR, kind of, I don't want to say grungy because that depends on how you process it, but that sort of very tone mapped look. This should create an image that's much more like a normal photograph, only with a broader dynamic range. So we'll click on that. The next option that's important for us is how many images do we want to process. Since this is batch processing, everything that I wanted has already been exported from Lightroom 4.2, which is what I'm using, to a folder on my computer. There are 6 images in this bracketed set, so I'm going to say 6. Now you could go anywhere from 2 all the way to 17. That would be one heck of a series of images and some dynamic range, but I know people that do that. For me it's 6, so we'll choose 6 so that it knows which ones to grab. The next section is the align source images. Now if you've shot on a tripod and the tripod was rock solid and steady and didn't move at all, then you can probably unclick this. My ball head, I think, slipped just a tad during shooting this because I didn't have a remote trigger and I was touching it. So I'm going to go ahead and put align source image on, and I'm going to do that by matching features with perspective control and also crop the aligned output. Your mileage will vary on some of these, but that seems to work for me. And this should line up everything in my image just in case there was a little bit of slippage so we don't have that sort of blurry look. Now, the next section is source. I've already gone in and selected my folder on my computer where the photos are. I created a folder called HDR Batch Brackets. I'll say OK, and you can see the files that I already have in there. Now I have 2 different sets of files, so I could just say do it by the whole folder and it would try to create all of the different. It would try to run through all of the different photos 6 at a time and try to create those into brackets. I don't need it to do that. I only want one file, so I'm going to click on this option that says individual files, and I'm going to take these 6 here. Once I see that I've got all 6 highlighted, I don't need to remove any files. I can come over here and just double check my destination. It's going to create the final image in the source folder. That's fine for me. You could, of course, move it to any folder you want on your machine. I'm going to have the output as a 16-bit TIFF file because I really like large files taking up a ton of space on my hard drive. You, on the other hand, may want it just as a JPEG or an 8-bit TIFF file. You have the option to set that here. You'll also notice that you have this option for Save 32-bit HDR file. You can either do it as a Radiance RGBE or as a open, let's see, what is it, open EXR. Sorry, well, I never use it. If you wanted to create the 32-bit file that Photomatix generates in order to do the work, you could do that, and that might save you time later if you wanted to go back and reprocess it a different way inside of Photomatix or inside of Photoshop, and you wouldn't have to run the initial generation of the 32-bit file. I was really hoping that I could use either the Radiance or the OpenEXR files to sort of batch process 32-bit files to then bring directly into Lightroom and use Lightroom for the editing, because now that Lightroom 4.1 I believe is the lowest number, Lightroom 4.1 can directly edit 32-bit files. You have some really amazing options for going in on a 32-bit file, HDR file, and doing, you know, your contrast, your color, and everything right inside of Lightroom, which a lot of us photographers are really familiar with how to get good results. Unfortunately, that only seems to work with 32-bit TIFF files. It doesn't seem to work with the OpenEXR or the Radiance files. I could be wrong. And I've only tested this very, very shortly, or very, very, briefly. So if you can get it to work, drop me a line, let me know. I'd love to hear that. But from my really brief tests, it seems that it wouldn't open it up in Lightroom. So that's unfortunate, because I would have loved to have been able to batch a whole group of these images overnight and come back and edit them all the next day. So anyhow, since we're not going to use that, I'm going to unclick this, save a little bit of space, and we're ready to go. I'm going to click run, and then I'm going to jump ahead, because the one thing about the Fusion Realistic option is, as it even mentions on the tooltip, it's very slow. And I don't mean slow just compared to how long it takes normally to open up files inside of Photomatix and get to the editing menu. I mean, it's like old school slow. I mean, it's 10-15 minutes when I ran through this one earlier. So if you're in a hurry, don't use this process. But if you have some time, you'll see the results here in a second, and they're very, very realistic, and I think it's worth the time under the right scenario. So I'm going to click run just so you see what it says. It starts off with loading the 6 images, and you'll see it run here. This is the status bar. You'll start to see this fill up as it goes along, and when it's done, now it's aligning the images. When it's all done, you'll have a link to your folder so you can go view the file. I'm going to stop this because it would be criminal to make you sit and watch 10 minutes of my computer sitting here chugging away. So I'll hit stop, but since I ran through this right before I started the video, I'm going to go ahead and open up the file in Photoshop and show you what the output was. So this was taken a few weeks ago in Cleveland, Ohio during a snowstorm when I was down over New Year's Eve. Now, granted, not the most dynamic photo in the world. It was a snowy day. It was right before dawn. There was a snowstorm going on. But you can look at the image. There's no haloing. Everything is been aligned correctly. The trees, are aligned. It was a little windy. I was worried about that, but that seems to work. If we scroll over to the buildings, everything looks okay here. There's no weird halo around the building. That looks good. The lights, everything looks okay. And now you have, again, a very realistic image. It's better than any of my normal bright. It doesn't look exceptionally exciting because there wasn't necessarily a huge dynamic range like there would be, in some situations. But with the light under the bridge, the areas by the river here, you can see the details there. The lights on the building, heck, even it's blown out a little, but compared to any of my normal brackets, you can kind of make that out. So it did a nice job, and you have a nice sort of flat file that you can do all of your normal editing with if you want to. You can come in, into Photoshop and tweak it any way you want. If you want to bring up the light a little bit, adjust there you go. So you can play with it however you want at this point, and do your normal workflow from there. So anyhow, I hope that helps you. It's an interesting technique. It's not one that I'll use all the time, especially given the speed, but it's another option for creating really realistic looking HDR with the tools that hopefully you already have. For more tips like this, come to the photographers-lounge.com, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.